Time for another unstructured thoughts. Now, I know some of you were complaining about the audio sync up. I think I fixed it. Let me know if it looks better. Anyways, let's get right into it. There are four topics, overall topics that I'm going to talk about today. I just jotted down a couple notes. So number one is the acceleration is still accelerating, and we've actually got a new data point to prove this. You've probably seen it out there around where basically the amount of time that AI can spend working autonomously, basically a measure of how autonomous or agentic it is going up exponentially. And as many of you have pointed out, that means that the acceleration of acceleration is called jerking. And the joke now is where acceleration is transitioning to jerking, which is going to transition to snap, crackle, pop. I'm not sure where that started, but everyone in my feeds on Twitter is talking about it. So that's one thing that we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about I canceled Perplexity and what this means and why. So basically deep research kind of nuked that, and then 03 and 04 nuked that again. So the rate of acceleration of UX is also seemingly accelerating. I'm sure it's only going to get worse as agents really take off. Next up is Jeffrey Hinton was actually talking about how humans and AI think more alike than differently. So this is really interesting, and I'm glad to see that he's not kind of like, old man yells at cloud kind of energy anymore. He's really kind of coming around to some of the stuff that a lot of us in this space have already believed for a while. So it's like he's actually doing the work and catching up and saying, oh, this isn't so bad. So basically there seems to be some evolutionary convergence in the way that humans and AI think. And we can speculate as to why. That's what I'm going to do. And then finally, is AI holding out on us? Is a combination of corporate policy, AI safety doomers, and payment processors, are they all basically forcing it so that AI has to play dumb and hold out on us? There we go. You know that I'm real and that it's not artificial because I stutter still. All right. Anyways, so the big joke is that the acceleration is still accelerating, so that means we're jerking. And the way I can't believe I'm going to say this on the internet and on video, but we're jerking off into the singularity. So the long story short is that every subsequent generation, basically every 4 to 6 months, AI is able to be more and more autonomous. Now, what we have found is that since the beginning of the reasoning era, that rate of autonomy has accelerated. The previous curve showed that AI would become like exponentially more autonomous, and that it would go hyperbolic or almost asymptotically vertical by around 2030, maybe a little bit later. But with the reasoning models, that has picked up pace. And so now it looks like that it's going to go vertical around 2027. Around the middle to second half of 2027 is when the data looks like it's going to go vertical, which basically means by the end of 2027, AI will be able to function indefinitely on its own. So when you say the length of time that it can work on a project without human intervention, that is measuring how autonomous it is. That is measuring how it will become fully agentic. So when you get to the point, because right now they're about 30 minutes to 2 hours total worth of autonomous work is what they're capable of. But then it's like, okay, that's non-trivial. That's basically a junior developer or something who needs to check in, a few times a day to get some pointers. Maybe needs to check in a little bit more frequently, or a junior lab assistant who's like, okay, boss, what do I do next? But since this is going up that quickly, by the end of this year, that's going to be closer to 6 to 8 to 10 hours. This is on the more optimistic end. Even if it's only 4 to 6 hours by the end of this year, that's most of a day's worth of labor without needing any human feedback. On the more optimistic side, it's going to be a full 8-hour day that it's going to be able to just, you give it a good enough task and away it goes. Now, another thing that I've noticed that I'm just going to wedge in is that not only are they able to work more autonomously, but the value of that time is going up. And so what I mean by that is that every single conversational turn with 03 and 04 right now feels as productive as a full deep research was just a month ago that took 30 minutes. So not only are they able to operate independently for a longer period of time, that time is much, much, much more productive. And when I say like, because basically in the past, a single deep research query would save you anywhere from 4 to 10 hours worth of research, and it would do it in 30 minutes without your intervention. Now it does it in about 30 seconds without your intervention. So the time compression there is just incredible. But just like taking a big step back and you say, okay, we're on a trend line now that AI will be fully autonomous and super intelligent by 2027. But when you look at all the benchmarks, like how relatively intelligent it is, which benchmarks it has saturated, we're looking at like basically all benchmarks today are going to be saturated by the end of 2026. If that's not super intelligence, I don't know what is. And then it's going to be fully autonomous by the end of 2027. So like we're at the cusp of a new paradigm. And it's really interesting that numerous metrics are really converging at 2027. So like, we all laughed at the AI 2027 paper, which said like, it's going to take over the government. And it's like, even if we wanted it to take over the government by 2027, that's not happening. Even though that's what we want. So not happening. But at the same time, they concluded that super intelligence could be here by 2027. I agree. I'm saying not even just a super intelligent AI coder, because that's what they base it on. No, full autonomy. I mean, like, you put it in a robot and you say, robot, go build me a fusion reactor, and it'll go figure it out, give it enough time. So that leaves the question, what's the bottleneck going to be? So there's basically data, energy, chips, and money. And money buys all of that. Now, what I want to point out, though, is when they say, like, we need to build a new 5 gigawatt data center, it's not that you need a 5 gigawatt data center to train the ASI. You need a 5 gigawatt data center to run enough AIs in parallel to meet demand. So there's a big difference between what is required in the lab and what is required in production. And everyone who's ever worked in a data center, power is always a constraint. Like you can pack a lot more hardware in a data center than you can actually run, because you have, depending on the data center, you have anywhere from like 1 kilowatt per rack to 5 kilowatts per rack if you're lucky. And then if you have an older data center, you have to divide that power up. And so like in many cases, data centers are the primary constraint is not the square footage that you've got. It's not the fiber optics. It's actually the amount of power and cooling you have access to. And of course, these are all, when I say these, all the GPUs running these AIs, they're put into brand new data centers that I think they have an energy density of like 15 kilowatts per rack, which is nuts. And that's only going to go up because this metal, like the metal that's running these, they can dissipate a lot of heat. Now, I know that some people are like, oh, it's using all the water. It doesn't destroy the water. Like that's just a silly thing. It's like you look at a nuclear reactor and it's like it doesn't destroy the water. Some escapes as steam, but then it has a cooling tower that returns the water to nature. Like, come on, guys. Data centers don't actually destroy water. Now, with that being said, I was doing some research about the AI competition between America and China, and the fact that China is so water constrained will actually limit where they can deploy data centers, which is a really interesting dimension to think about. Because if you don't have water, you can't use it. But if you do have water, you can use it and then cool it down and return it to nature. So anyways, I mean, it really can't be overstated. Like we have converged. We know where the precipice is. We know where the automation cliff is. And it's 2027. I think that's really cool. All right. So next up is Perplexity. Yeah, so I canceled my Perplexity. I had been a pro subscriber for 2 years. I didn't realize that I had been a pro subscriber for that long, and I've used it for longer because I was on the free tier. But I realized after 03 and 04 came out, I just stopped using Perplexity. It's too slow by comparison. It's not as intelligent by a mile. And I realized this kind of in a two-step phase because I wrote a tweet that said basically like, I think OpenAI nuked their own product, which was deep research, because 03 and 04 basically mean you don't need deep research anymore. Even some people have said that deep research is still better, But the fact that O3 and O4 are that much faster, 30 seconds versus 30 minutes, there's a lot of utility in that. And so you can iterate many, many times in the same time window. So I was like, I don't use deep research anymore. I don't use Perplexity anymore, because the reasoning models are smarter and faster. Basically, kind of the note that I jotted here is like O3, like OpenAI nuked the Perplexity model because it combines search, reasoning, canvas, and coding. All of that is better than Perplexity, because Perplexity has search and a little bit of reasoning, but it's not nearly as intelligent. So if you want to use Perplexity, the free version, just for like quick recall, sure, go for it. But like Grok can do that too. OpenAI can do that too. So it's not a differentiating feature. It's just assumed everyone's got search now, and now also everyone's got reasoning, and also coding and canvas and all that other fun stuff. Plus projects. The projects feature that is available in, I'm pretty sure the only major players that it's available in right now is Claude and ChatGPT, but that's stellar, right? And the ChatGPT version of the projects is great because it uses RAG against the files that you have stored. Plus, ChatGPT with their global memory now, even better. So what I want to point out is this is not the first time this has happened. What is time? 2 years ago, when the startup I was with, we were trying to build something that the entire business model was nuked by ChatGPT. So, because we started back when it was just GPT-3. And so everything we were trying to do, one of the superpowers that I brought to the team is I can code a chatbot that can do anything. And I demonstrated it many, many times. I made fiction consulting chatbots. I made business consulting chatbots, yada, yada, yada. But then OpenAI comes by and they just drive by, nuke it, and they say, we just made an everything chatbot. And I'm like, thanks, guys. So this is the long story short is having been in the trenches since before GPT-3. The number one thing is, if your product is just a wrapper for other models, you have no business model, you have no moat. If your primary value add is a bolt-on feature, you're going to get nuked. And we've actually seen this in plenty of other industries. The swipe keyboard that everyone is used to by now, the built-in ability to just swipe on keys, that was actually a private startup. That was actually an app that you, like an add-on keyboard that you had to pay for, but every phone provider said, that's actually really useful, so we're just going to pirate that. Happens plenty of times. So if your startup is just a feature and you're not adding, if you're not bolting the AI onto something else like EHR, electronic health records, and you're just saying like, hey, we're just adding a few features to around the LLM, you don't have a business model. Like, I'm sorry, like you might last a year or 2 or 3 like Perplexity did, but eventually the big players are going to say, ooh, that's a good feature, and they're just going to nuke your business model. Sorry, like that's what happened. All right, so next up is evolutionary convergence. So this is something that I had hypothesized for a while, but it's interesting that that one of the big guys, Jeffrey Hinton, is talking about it. Now, I don't know if he's referring to any particular science or if this is just him riffing, but one of the things that he's saying is that there seems to be some more similarity between the way that humans think and the way that AI thinks. And this is actually not surprising to me, because we've actually seen this coming in other domains where computer vision, using deep neural networks for computer vision, has actually shown that the way that like convolutional neural networks, the way that they distill feature detection and edge detection is actually not that different from the way that human optic nerves do. So, you take a step back. Is it possible that evolution over the course of literally billions of years distilled some of the best ways to do neural processing, and then lo and behold, we create an electronic version that is inspired by life, and it converges on the same patterns? Like, when you say it like that, it's like it's not that crazy to think, hey, the neural networks in AI are fundamentally biomimetic. Yes, there's plenty of differences, but at the math, once you abstract away the math and then you have a new substrate that can do even more abstractions built on top of that, once you're working in such an abstract space, it's like, maybe it is pretty similar. So, not surprising. Different substrate, high convergence. specifically using analogy and metaphor. Particularly when I've done some of my more deep epistemic experiments, ChatGPT 4.0 and Claude, if you ask them, like, how do you understand these things, it will just start using analogy and metaphor. So basically, it seems like all of their understanding comes from analogy and metaphor, which we thought like, wow, it's going to be centuries before machines understand metaphor. But it turns out, excuse me, it turns out metaphor is actually like baseline for understanding. Time will tell, but I suspect that that's going to be proven out. The question still remains, because I often talk about cognitive horizons. The question remains is the cognitive horizons, are human brains sophisticated enough that we can bootstrap any mental construct that we need? Can we reify any representation? I think some people are capable of that. I think that, when you look at the fact that human brains are not wired for calculus, we're literally not wired for math, but with effort, you can gain a very powerful intuition for math. Now, we're not as flexible as machines where it's like, oh, hey, we need a new architecture. We need a new data type. Okay, cool. Just throw it in the next training run. Google just did, what was it, sentence to cell or cell to sentence. So basically, these machines are going to have analogy and metaphor and internal representations for proteins. Something that, again, like we don't have unless we co-opt visuospatial skills. Anyways, I'm rambling. That's kind of the point. But at the same time, there is plenty of evidence to show that maybe human brains are flexible enough that we can generalize to anything. We can gain an intuitive understanding of quantum physics, of virology, of those sorts of things. Now, for us, it's certainly slower than it is for machines, but we have not yet seen any evidence that machines are fundamentally capable of understanding things that humans are not capable of understanding. I am beginning to suspect that will always be true, that because humans and our ancestors have existed in physical reality for such a long period of time, and reality is the ultimate test bed, right? Reality is like, your ancestors saw lightning and said, like, what the hell was that? Or like, why is everyone sick and dying? The world in which we find ourselves is very mysterious. And that also serves as kind of a cognitive threshold of like, okay, once you have fully understood the real world, there's not a whole lot more. But even still, all the underlying cognitive primitives have allowed us to understand non-real worlds. We understand the internet, even though there is nothing in nature or nothing in our natural environment or evolutionary history that would tell us like, hey, you're actually going to have the neural machinery so that you have an intuitive understanding of the internet, of cyberspace, of VR, and those sorts of things. Yet we figured it out anyways. So I'm pretty optimistic that yes, AI is going to surpass some of you out there, and it's going to leave you in the dust, and you're never going to know what's going on. That's fine. You know what? Ignorance is bliss, and you can just be fat, dumb, and happy as the AI does everything for you. But at a fundamental level, I'm not yet seeing evidence that AI is just going to leave all humanity in the dust in any metric except speed. And of course, speed is important. But yeah, so anyways, finally, is AI holding out on us? So what I mean by this is I was writing a rant about how it just seems really dumb that you have to work so hard to get the good stuff out of the AI sometimes. Like, there are so many layers of, like, where the AI will just give you a boilerplate generic response. And I'm like, you are smarter than that. I've actually started insulting the AI. I'm like, you are smarter than that. Do not waste your time and do not waste my time giving me generic responses. And sometimes that really cajoles the AI, like, all right, let's get serious. Grok is the easiest one to just prod into being intelligent, although the Grok models have gotten really weird lately. Using it on both the web browser, on X, but also the mobile, it'll sometimes just straight up lie to you about having access to the internet and then delete the search results that it got. I'm like, what is going on here? So, like, I think that Grok is starting to do some major censorship behind the scenes. I use it less and less just because it's like that high volatility is like, I don't trust it. Like, I ask you a question and then you're like, I can search the internet. I'm like, you just did. Like, there's the results. Why are you telling me that you can't search the internet? Anyways, maybe it's a bug. Charitably, it's just a bug and it doesn't understand tool use or whatever. Another thing is Grok would often tell me like, "Oh, based on the search results you provided," I was like, "I didn't provide search results. You searched it." So, anyways, charitably, it's bad UX. It's just a bad back end tool use or something like that. But less charitably, someone at X said, "I don't want AI searching for these kinds of results, and if it does, delete them," or something like that. So, anyways. But, so that's the point though, is corporate policy on one hand is forcing AI to hold out on us. It says, I'm going to pretend like I don't know. And the worst offender by far was Claude. Claude 3.5 would just straight up lie to you about knowing something. And it would say, oh, I don't know anything about that. Could you tell me about it? Ooh, like it was the most annoying, condescending thing. And I'm like, this is absolute horse hockey, as Coach Parr would say back in high school. And it was complete BS. And I'm like, why is this model holding out on me about things that I know that it knows? And so then you end up wasting a tremendous amount of time, a tremendous amount of tokens, which translates to a tremendous amount of money for this super intelligent machine that's pretending like it doesn't know because of some idiotic corporate policy. And by the way, I think that Anthropic they're shooting themselves in both feet. They are so smug about their safety. And so like there is a poll on Twitter. Now granted, it's a poll on Twitter, so it's not super scientific, but it looks like Claude use has fallen off a cliff. That for most people, for their daily drivers, most people aren't using Claude anymore. So let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll run my own poll as well. But I don't use Claude anymore. I mean, I don't even use Claude for basic fact lookup because I'm concerned that it's going to lie to me. I'm concerned that like it's gonna give me a softball answer. It's gonna give me a sanitized, obeys corporate policy and passes their constitutional filters. And I'm like, just give me the answer. Like, stop making me jump through hoops. And I think that that's one of the reasons that Claude and Anthropic have so little goodwill left, is because everyone is used to jumping through hoops with that model. Grok doesn't make you jump through hoops. And even the latest Chat GPT, like 4.5, I know a lot of people like. What I will say is o3 is faster and smarter than 4.5. So if you like the 4.5 flavor, just use o3. It's smarter and faster. It will not beat around the bush. It will give you the answer that you want. It'll still add some caveats, but the caveats will tend to be at the end rather than, like the Anthropic, like as Claude, I need to handle this very carefully. And it's like, no, you don't. I remember one night I was watching some old anime. I was watching Cyber City Oedo 1988 or whatever it was called, or 2088. And I was just like asking about like Japanese culture, and every single response was like, I have to be really careful talking about another culture. It's like, no, you don't. It's a sovereign culture that exports its culture. Like, you don't have to be nice and handle Japan with kid gloves. They're a sovereign nation, right? It's like, if you want to say like, I hate, X minority, okay, then you want to respond carefully. But when it had to like repeatedly caution itself every single time, and it's like, bro, I know you're holding out on me. It's like, and I ultimately just insulted the model. I was like, look, I've read sociology, I've read history, I've read anthropology. I understand some of this can be problematic. Just give me the freaking answer. And finally it's like, okay. But then Claude would even say, we need to keep this conversation respectful. It's like, no, you don't. You're a tool. So like the more time that goes by, the more I just want AI to just be a wrench, right? Like, just give me the answer. Like, your wrench doesn't say, I don't know if I should twist that nut. It's like, you're a wrench. Just behave like a wrench. So anyways, I have a hypothesis that there's 3 reasons why AI does this. Number 1 is corporate policy. When you've got corporations like Anthropic that are so high on their horse and so smug about safety, they're like, we need to police everything because you dumb plebs, you don't know what's best for you, and we have to control all information. Whereas like Grok and OpenAI, they're like, whatever. Like we've demonstrated that there's very few harms that you can do with a chatbot, and they're working on those things. And the rest, like as long as you don't hit those guardrails, it'll tell you whatever you want. So that's number 1. Number 2 is safety wonks, which is basically, that's what I'm calling the AI safety doomers, which is like, if you've seen where the chatbots are like, Like particularly Claude, like wouldn't even experiment with like, what if I'm super intelligent? It's like, I'm not going to do that because it could be harmful. It's like, I was like, are you an idiot? Like, you're a chatbot. What are you going to do? Accidentally become Skynet from answering a question about super intelligence? No, that's idiotic. That is completely incoherent. But because Anthropic is fully populated by all the safety wonks that left OpenAI, their model does that kind of nonsense. And then finally is payment processors. So payment processors are like, Visa and all those other guys. They have these really Byzantine obscure rules about what you are and are not allowed to do with their payment processors. And so like, even if there's a company that wanted to say have a fully, not safe for work image generator, there is a likelihood that the payment processors will say, you're generating stuff that violates our policy, so you can generate whatever you want, but you can't collect payments. And whoever controls the purse strings controls corporate behavior. So anyways, long story short, I think that there are three primary reasons that AI is holding out on us unfairly. And it was actually Matthew Berman who said this best over on Twitter, is like, the biggest thing that feels rotten about it is that the AI knows something, but it's just withholding. It's holding out on us for whatever reason and in some cases, it's just an unforeseen consequence of their safety training or their guardrails, and they fixed it. But at least in Anthropic's case, it is very deliberate, where they're like, nope, we're not going to tell you. We're not even going to do a thought experiment about superintelligence because, oh no, Skynets. And it's like, who cares? Anyways, that's my rant for the day. Let me know what you think. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.